Good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. And what a show we have in store for you today. Did anybody, seems like everybody, got to see the big boy train yesterday? That was quite a scene. Maybe I'll play my clip later on of mine. Mine's not very good, but I did see it, and it was fun to be a part of that. We've got on the program this morning, listen to this lineup. We're going to hear from Congressman Nick Langworthy about a new fraud prevention package going through Washington. He did a Zoom press conference. We'll have his clip of what it's all about and then a question that I asked him. Then we're going to hear from Randy Dye. Randy Dye is running for Town of Corning Justice. So we'll be talking with him. He was on previously in this election cycle because, of course, the primary is, early primary voting starts Saturday, as a matter of fact. But primary vote coming up on June the 23rd. Then in the 7 o'clock hour, it's Fridays with Phil. Assemblyman Phil Palmesano will be joining us. We've got some viewer comments to kick off the program. But if you have pictures from Big Boy, you can send them in. If I can get them up on the screen in time, I'd love to. And by the way, we want to start the program thanking our good friend, Chris Severson. We've got more stickers. He gifted us a nice package of Frankly Speaking stickers. Look at those. Fantastic. So we appreciate him. And I'm sure his father, Brian, is watching this morning. So we do appreciate it. All right, let's go to some viewer comments. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning, Mark. President Trump has halted bombing in Iran and says final points of agreement approved. So let's hope this war is about over. It's about time. People need our relief. Thank you, Mark. Yes, Trump said we ended the war with Iran today, and he touted an emerging agreement that he said would permanently prevent Tehran from attaining a nuclear weapon. Speaking during a virtual tele-rally for Georgia gubernatorial candidate Burt Jones, Trump celebrated what he described as a major diplomatic breakthrough only hours after announcing that he had canceled plans for a U.S. strike against Iran because a framework agreement was nearly complete. He said, I don't know if you heard, but we ended the war with Iran today, and they have agreed never to have a nuclear weapon. That was the whole purpose. That was 95% of it. Probably you heard that today we settled with Iran. We made a great deal. There'll be no nuclear weapons. People will start coming home very soon. It's pretty much completed. We've got everything we wanted. He also told the New York Post that the deal is all wrapped up. Based on the fact that discussions with the Islamic Republic of Iran have been brought up to the highest level of Iranian leadership and approved, I have, as President of the United States of America, canceled the scheduled strikes and bombs against Iran this evening. Discussions and final points have been, in both concept and great detail, approved by all parties involved, including the U.S., Israel, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Turkey, Pakistan, Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, Egypt, and others. It's pretty much all wrapped up. Details of the new agreement were few, but Trump indicated that the U.S. would lift its nearly 2-month-old blockade of Iranian ports once the deal is signed. Something Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said would only happen if Iran reopened the Strait of Hormuz. Trump saying on Truth Social, naval blockade will remain in full force and effect until this transaction is finalized, adding that an in-person signing ceremony would happen at a time and place to be announced shortly. A U.S. source familiar with mediation efforts described the agreement as all-inclusive and similar to early iterations of the Memorandum of Understanding passed between the U.S. and Iran. The main hang-up, according to the source, was sequencing, referring to the order in which the terms of arrangement would be fulfilled. Those terms have included reopening the Strait of Hormuz, lifting the U.S. blockade on Iranian ports, releasing frozen Iranian funds, and Iran's willingness to discuss a plan to destroy, degrade, or transfer its stockpile of enriched uranium and vow to never seek a nuclear weapon. While Iran has reportedly demanded economic incentives before it would sign, Secretary of State Marco Rubio last week told Congress that lifting sanctions would only be considered in exchange for real nuclear concessions. Now, it is being reported that the U.S. military was 3 hours away from an Iranian strike, another round of strikes on Iran, before President Trump abruptly halted the operation and announced the breakthrough. According to NBC News, the military had already received orders to carry out the strikes and was actively preparing for the mission when Trump called it off. U.S. Navy vessels had adjusted air operations and readied munitions for the planned attack before the president announced that discussions with Iran had reached the country's highest levels and the framework of a deal had been approved. Now, according to some diplomats, and take this with a huge grain of salt, because this is diplomats that briefed CNN. So again, take it with a grain of salt, but some of the key points in the agreement are a 60-day ceasefire on all fronts, including Lebanon, and that will begin upon signing. The Strait of Hormuz will be reopened immediately without Iran levying any fees for passage. It ensures the free flow of energy and commercial goods. Traffic through the waterway would return to pre-war levels after 30 days of signing. The U.S. blockade of Iranian ports will be lifted, and there would be some sanction relief based on the progression of the deal and continued agreement or engagement in good faith, though it does not include a set date for sanction relief. The agreement satisfies all U.S. requirements on the nuclear issue, including Iran pledging not to obtain a nuclear weapon, as well as the issue of Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium. And the final point, the deal will be called the Islamabad Agreement. Now, that's not everything. I want to make clear, and this could, again, be, again, CNN. So take it with a grain of salt, but that's what little we know right now. Okay, so there is your update on Iran. Oh, here we go. Jack writes in, good morning, Frank. Well, good morning, Jack. The alarm on my phone to tell me to go watch, it didn't go off yesterday. But I'm driving to Sarah this morning. I'll be sending live pictures. Thank you, Jack. There it is. Okay, we'll try to get those up on the screen of some of the big boy pictures. Wow, those are some great ones. I'll try to. It's a little difficult to do it live, but I'm going to try. That's great. We'll get to your comments here in just a little bit, Jack. I don't want to read them live on the air. I'll put them all together and see if I can get that picture up on the screen. And please, if you're on your way to Sarah, get us some more pictures. That is where it is stationed today. It was fun. Well, you know what? Why not kick off the broadcast with that? That's a fun topic. Big boy coming to our area, and I decided it's not great. I'll be the first to admit, but this was my point of view in beautiful Irwin, New York. There you go. Big boy making its way through Irwin. It was amazing, something like this, bringing the community together. I know we talk about community on this program so much. I was driving around, and I had my timer set. I was getting ready to go and see it somewhere, but I hadn't really decided where. And then I saw at the Irwintown Barns, the garage, I should say, about, I don't know, 1,000 people probably. A couple of little areas. I'm like, oh, this seems like as good a place as any. So it was fun to pull up, and I only had to wait about 15, 20 minutes to see it screech through, and it was a lot of fun. I know many people were talking about it. I hope you had an opportunity to see it. Our local community stopped for a moment, didn't it? Seemed like everybody was watching Big Boy screaming through. Okay, we've got so much more to get to. We don't have a lot of time this morning to get to all of our topics, so I would ask you, you can comment during the whole show because we have Phil on and all that. But if you have comments, keep them coming in. I'll do my best to read them this morning. I'll do my best to get your pictures of Big Boy up if you send them in. Also, we have a couple big announcements coming up a little bit later on in the program as well. Let's see. I have a moment here. A deranged vandal has scrawled a giant anti-Trump message in the grass at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. What was the message? 8647. Now, that is what has got James Comey into quite a bit of trouble. Hot water, if you will. But yeah, like I said, here at even local protests, the protests that happen, or I don't know if it's happening anymore on Mondays, but it was when Congressman Langworthy's office was down the street. They would have protests every Monday, and I saw someone with a big handwritten poster that said 8647. I guess it's fun to make light of assassination language for a president that's been, 3 now? Attempted assassinations that we know of. The string of numbers, likely meant to be viewed from above, appeared as dead brown grass in a large chunk of lawn just east of the World War II memorial on Thursday. Now, the term 8647 references the restaurant slang 86, meaning to get rid of something, along with Trump as the 47th president. Trump allies and the U.S. Department of Justice have said the political slogan should be interpreted as a call to violence, while Trump opponents have insisted it's simply a call to expel the president from office. But I think they know that it leans towards the violence, and that's why they seem to have so much fun with it, sadly. And like I said, right here, I was shocked when I saw the protests on Marcus Street with someone with a gigantic sign. I've seen bumper stickers with it now at this point. A spokesman for the Department of Interior, which manages the National Mall, said the message was deranged vandalism and will not be tolerated. Officials responded to the vandalism Thursday and removed some of the numbers, according to an aerial view photo. A White House spokesperson said anyone who engages in or endorses political violence or assassination culture must be condemned in the harshest terms possible. They should also immediately seek psychiatric help to treat their severe and debilitating case of Trump derangement syndrome that has warped their brains and made them sick in the head. Now, the incident came just days before crowds were expected to flock to America's front lawn to celebrate Trump's birthday with a UFC match at the White House on Sunday. I do want to ask the question, are you going to watch UFC fights? I don't think I'll be able to make it. That's a late show. But now they're piling on it. Just whether it's that vandalism or just, and you know the hate that the left has for Trump. The Daily Beast, the far left Daily Beast, celebrating the fact that, get this is how pathetic or petty, I guess, the anger towards Trump has become. The plan for the Great American State Fair was to have every state have pavilions on the National Mall, decked out to represent different people and cultures from around the U.S. as part of this summer's celebration for the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Now, you think about the celebrations in 1976, and towns and communities having all of these major celebrations, and we still do on the 250th. Now you fast forward to the 250th, and they're celebrating each state on the National Mall, and yes, you guessed it, states are backing out. The dream has started to crumble after 3 states dropped out and with one still on the fence, citing a combination of costs and fears that the 2-week D.C. festival would be overly partisan. Democrat Oregon Governor Tina Kotek has raised concerns about partisanship at America 250, and CNN reports that her state cited it as a reason for pulling out. Luke Harkin, a spokesperson, said the state of Oregon will not be participating in the Great American State Fair due to both the cost of participating in the fair and growing concerns that the event in Washington, D.C. is shaping up to be a more partisan affair than originally presented. So isn't that interesting? This is another example of blame the victim. So Trump is going to have all these concerts. I wasn't overly impressed with the lineup, but that's neither here nor there. There's going to be a bunch of shows, and every artist who had, or at least her agent had agreed to be a part of it, they all backed out citing Trump. Not all. I think there was Vanilla Ice, I think, stayed on. But all backed out because they did not like Trump. I guess some of their fans criticized them, and they were too scared. They ran and hide with any kind of criticism. So they pulled out. Okay. So Trump says, all right, you don't want to do that. We'll have Lee Greenwood. We'll have, I can't remember the other gentleman's name. We'll have the Air Force Band, people like that. And then President Trump will give a speech. If you don't want to play the music, we'll do it this way. So now that he does it that way, now they're claiming it's partisan. The only partisan thing was that the left felt the need to attack performers for celebrating America's 250th anniversary. It's unbelievable how, as I say so often, they twist themselves up into a pretzel to, again, make Trump the bad guy on this. We're running late. Stay with us. I got a couple other strange announcements this morning. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. So as I mentioned, Jack wrote in and he said, this is a photo, I'm going to pop it up right now, that was taken by my friend Jared, but I can't believe I didn't see it. It drove right through my town of Elmira Heights. That's why I'm driving to Sayre this morning. It's leaving there at 9 a.m. for a WeGo. I'm going to take some of your business cards with me to get to the train, guys. See if we can get some access. It says no public access, but I'm going to see if I can get some on the air pictures of the engineers or something. Well, please do, Jack, and I appreciate that picture. That's a beautiful picture, especially with the storm clouds overhead. A lot of people got some good vantage points there. It is amazing. I don't want to keep belaboring it. And by the way, any pictures anybody wants to send out, I'd love to see them. It was just amazing how many people, and I know it's almost like, I guess, a Grateful Dead show. People are traveling along with the train. But just in one little location in the town of Irwin, cars were all along the bridge. They were all parked. I don't know how they ever got out. It almost looked like a Bills game trying to leave that place. But I don't know how everybody knew to just show up there and what that's looking like at each town. It just keeps growing and growing. But it was a really amazing experience. So if you went, I'd love to hear your story about it, or if you want to send your pictures. Hey, by the way, if Elon Musk is tuning in, my gas bill is due. The reason I say that is he's the world's first trillionaire, at least on paper, thanks to SpaceX initial public offering, or IPO. Yes, a SpaceX, a rocket, satellite, internet, and an artificial intelligence company that's bleeding cash. Okay, this is written from a negative standpoint on Musk, and has puny sales compared to established technology giants. Announced Thursday the price for its initial public offering of $135 per share. The step sets up to blockbuster IPO that ranks as the largest in history at about $75 billion. Musk was already the richest person in the world, according to Bloomberg and Forbes. He also is in line to receive $1 trillion pay package if he hits certain milestones at the automaker Tesla. But the SpaceX IPO pushes him into trillionaire status, depending on how you count his wealth. Okay. So Elon Musk, boy, what a way, just because he associated himself with Trump. The hate in that article as well. But congratulations to Elon and his $1 trillion. All right, I think this is going to shock you. I know it shocked me. I don't see the upside in this. Maybe you do. I know Andrew Breitbart used to say you have to go where kind of the other side is, right? You can't just keep preaching to the choir. So sometimes he would go on, the late Andrew Breitbart would sometimes go on Bill Maher's show and those type of things. So I guess that could be the argument here. But it is announced, that Vice President J.D. Vance will appear on The View next week, marking his first appearance on the reliably liberal ABC News program. Vance, who is set to join the show on June 16th, will be the third sitting vice president to appear on The View. All 6 co-hosts are expected to be in studio for the rare interview with an elected Republican. Yeah, it's not just rare that they're speaking with the Vice President of the United States. It's probably more rare at this point that they have a Republican guest. And you can't count Marjorie Taylor Greene at this point. They had her on just so she could badmouth Trump and Republicans. Listen to the numbers. The View had a total of 341 guests last year, but only 2 of them were conservative, while 128 were liberal. Now, Vance is attending the interview to discuss his new book, Communion, Finding My Way Back to Faith, along with news of the day and his goals for the Trump administration. That'll be nice to hear the vice president shout it over at everything he says. That is going to be, I'm not going to watch it, but it'll be something to hear about later. Also, well, I guess we're just going with media bias this morning. The View, obviously biased. We're talking about that piece that hated Elon Musk. We're talking about the criticism of Trump holding the Great American State Fair to celebrate 250th. How about this? I see this from the AP News, and this is an example of, a lot of times we talk how the media can manipulate people through omission and not bringing certain things in, or certain things up, or they can twist language and like that. This is an example. The headline reads, Trump's White House UFC fight requires $60 million and 7 federal agencies. Now, I think most people's knee-jerk reaction would be taxpayers are spending $60 million for a UFC fight at the White House? Well, let me start, and we'll see when we find out where that $60 million is coming from. President Donald Trump's planned UFC fight at the White House's South Lawn has required a monumental effort from more than 7 federal agencies, hundreds of staff working on site daily, and at least $60 million, according to a legal filing that offers a glimpse into the preparations. That's paragraph number 1. The event is part of the 250th anniversary of America's founding and is scheduled for the weekend with the main attraction, 7 mixed martial arts matches on Sunday. Paragraph 2. Now, paragraph 3. That is, if a judge doesn't halt the proceedings, which is sought by 2 Virginia residents in a federal lawsuit against the National Park Service, which oversees the South Lawn. Now we move on to paragraph number 4. The agency filed a rebuff of the request Tuesday in court and in it laid out the operations for the event. Paragraph 5. Well over $60 million and tens of thousands of hours of labor have been expended, the document read, adding that the money came from the UFC and groups affiliated with it. Paragraph number 5 is where it finally comes up that it's not your money, it's not taxpayers' money. The $60 million and tens of thousands of hours of labor, at least the money, has come from the UFC and groups affiliated with it. So, of course, they want you to read the headline and then tell your, and this is more for anti-Trump people, to tell your friends, can you imagine we're paying $60 million? And then you'll hear it online and there'll be so much outrage and so many people upset. When in all actuality, it was a private company deciding to invest that money for not only the press, for the PR, but also to celebrate America's 250. I guess right now it is very unpopular to celebrate America 250. All right, we got to take a break because when we return, we're going to hear from Congressman Nick Langworthy. It's just a quick clip from yesterday, but this is about, when we've been talking so often about this, but an anti-fraud package, a measure that he and other Republicans are taking up in Washington. We'll learn about that when we return. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Now we take it over to Congressman Nick Langworthy, who discussed the anti-fraud package being pushed through Washington.
Resigned to the fact that it's too big and has lost all accountability to the taxpayers. Who could blame them for being frustrated when you read headlines? But the Minnesota fraud scandals that uncovered billions in theft of taxpayer dollars sent shockwaves across the country and lifted the veil on how bad the problem really is. What happened in Minnesota is not an isolated incident. It exposed glaring holes in the system that bad actors have figured out and built billions of taxpayer dollars in very corrupt schemes. Fraudsters have learned how to exploit gaps between agencies, weaken verification systems, and there's a federal bureaucracy that too often prioritizes just shoveling the money out the door over ensuring it goes to the right people who really need it. And there's too many politicians who would rather reap the political benefits of showering constituencies with money and hope no one notices. As a member of the House Oversight Committee, I participated in a series of hearings on the Minnesota fraud scandals. And it was abundantly clear that Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison were made aware of the fraud, but did nothing to stop it. Instead, they punished the whistleblowers and they kept the gravy train flowing. It was unconscionable. And the testimony was ridiculous. And I'm pleased that it has been recommended that the Department of Justice open a criminal investigation. There is ample evidence, and taxpayers deserve justice. I mean, theft happened. Americans work too hard for their paychecks and to pay their taxes. And there is nothing more insulting than having your taxes go to fraudsters while elected officials turn a blind eye because they want votes from a key constituency. Every cent that goes to fraud is a corruption tax that all Americans pay. And we can't lose sight of the fact that government spending is directly related to affordability. We passed a working families tax cut last year because we wanted Americans to keep more of their hard-earned money. And we must also go after the spending side of the ledger, obviously. The U.S. Government Accountability Office estimates that the federal government loses between $233 billion and $521 billion to fraud every single year. Now that represents roughly 3 to 7% of our total federal obligations. What happened in Minnesota is also happening in other states too, including in our home state of New York. On just Medicaid reports alone, a 2022 controller's audit found nearly $1 billion in billing errors in improper payments, including payments to providers who were no longer eligible to participate in the program. And that's just what we know about. And New York's not done nearly enough to root out fraud in Medicaid. That's why we're taking action this week to pass a signature package of bills aimed at stopping fraud, waste, and abuse before taxpayer dollars are lost. We're ending the pay and chase model and putting safeguards in place before the money goes actually out the door. Verify first, pay second. It's just very common sense. It's simple and it's a straightforward approach. First, we're making permanent the successful pandemic-era fraud detection tools. One of the few success stories that emerged from COVID was the development of sophisticated anti-fraud data analytics that helped investigators identify billions of dollars in suspicious spending. Now, unfortunately, many of those tools are set to expire. This bill makes those anti-fraud capabilities permanent, makes it the way we do business. It creates a government-wide inspector general for fraud, accountability, and recovery. And it gives investigators better tools to connect data across agencies and programs. Too often these programs are stovepiped and they don't talk to each other. This has worked and we're going to keep it going. We're making it permanent. Second, as I mentioned, we're requiring agencies to verify eligibility and identify risks before payments are actually made. This may be the most important reform in the package because it attacks the root problem. This bill allows Treasury to flag suspicious payments and return them to agencies for review before the money goes out the door. It doesn't stop legitimate payments or slow down routine transaction. It simply says that when there are clear warning signs of fraud, we should investigate before taxpayers get ripped off, not after. The recovery sometimes is nearly impossible. Sometimes that money has gone on to countries around the globe. Third, we're cracking down on student aid scams involving ghost students. This is something most Americans didn't know was going on across the country. Scammers have actually used stolen identities, fake identities, and fraudulent enrollment schemes to collect federal student aid intended for legitimate students. This bill requires stronger identity verification and fraud detection systems before the aid is dispersed. And every dollar that goes to a fake student is a dollar that doesn't go to someone that's honestly trying to get an education and fulfill their dreams to build a better future. Now, taken together, these bills represent a major shift on how the government approaches fraud prevention. Instead of paying first and asking questions later, we're verifying eligibility before the money is spent. We have the tools, we have the technology at our fingertips to build these protection systems, and we owe it to the American taxpayer to put them in place. Every dollar lost to fraud is paid for through higher taxes, more borrowing, larger deficits, and ultimately inflationary pressures that make life more expensive for working families. The tax relief we delivered must be paired with fiscal responsibility and accountability. We cannot continue asking taxpayers to send more money to Washington while tolerating a system that loses hundreds of billions of dollars every year through preventable fraud. This is good government, and it's a central component of my goal to reform the federal government and make life more affordable for the hardworking people who actually pay the bills in this country. These reforms are just the beginning, and I'm going to continue pushing for additional measures that bring accountability, that bring transparency, and bring common sense back here to Washington. Now, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll take any questions that you.
Hi, Congressman Frank Acom from Big Fox News. How are you?
I'm doing great, Frank. Thanks for being with us.
Yes, I have a question going back to the anti-fraud package. You mentioned the overwhelming votes that they were receiving in Minnesota because of maybe some of these fraudulent benefits, the waste overall supporting perhaps some of the politicians. What has the support been in Washington, keeping that in mind?
Well, I think that there's, people that have watched these things get uncovered. I think it was the beginning of the year. It was around Christmas time that this all came to light. They've been crying out for us to do something. It's pretty shameful that it's taken us until June to actually put a fraud package on the table. We've had hearing after hearing We have to get serious about this. This is an emergency situation because every day that this money flies out the door with no recourse is embarrassing. I mean, we need DOJ to take this seriously and take these prosecutions to the mattresses. I mean, these people have to be made an example of. Anyone that's defrauding the federal government needs to absolutely be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And my hope is if Todd Blanche is confirmed as the Attorney General, he'll make this a top priority. I mean, there's a lot of noise here in Washington, but back home when I talk to people, when they see people ripping off the federal government, when they have to pay the taxes that they pay, it's just totally unacceptable. And they want to see there be real penalties and consequences for people that defraud the federal government and government at all levels, frankly.
Thank you very much. We thank Congressman Nick Langworthy for taking our question and discussing the anti-fraud measures, much like the measures that J.D. Vance is working very hard on. Okay, when we return, we are going to hear from Randy Dye. He is running for Town of Corning Justice. It's a quick interview. After that, we'll have a little time together. Got kind of I think, a pretty big announcement. We'll be breaking some news here. And then we'll be talking with Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. So don't go anywhere. Again, have we covered? Oh, have you been watching the World Cup, too? I'm asking all these questions this morning. Send your pictures of Big Boy. I know everybody, seems like the world stopped for a moment, and everybody wanted to see Big Boy. So send your pictures in. Also, if you happened to watch the World Cup, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? And just get your questions, your comments in. We're having a fun Friday this morning because it's Fridays with Phil. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Aiken. We're broadcasting from the Hesselsons in studio. And in that studio, we have candidate for Corning Town Justice Randy Dye. Thanks for joining us again.
You're welcome.
All right, it's getting nitty-gritty time.
Yeah, we're getting down there.
How's the campaign been going since the last time we talked?
It's been going good. Very well. Very well. Very happy.
What have you been hearing? Because obviously you're knocking on doors. You're putting out signs.
Yeah.
I think everybody can attest to that.
Yeah.
What have people been saying?
Well, the big thing is just getting people to the primary.
Yeah.
And reminding them that you have to be out there. Early voting starts
The 13th.
Saturday.
Yeah.
At the annex up there in Bath. Mm-hmm. Got to get out there because being a primary, a lot of people don't pay attention to it.
Well, that's $1 million question that we've been asking everybody. How do you get people out there? Because if they go in, now Democrats have state comptroller and they have Congress. So they're going to come out. Those are big ones.
Yeah.
But on your ballot, it's just you and your opponent.
Yeah, and I think in the county there's only, 6 primaries?
Yeah.
So you got to make phone calls. You got to go to the doors. You got, you got the signs. You got, emailers going out. Stuff on the mailboxes. Let them know. Hey, we're here. We're open for business. Come if you got questions, come ask.
And I think the biggest problem is even with the campaigning, it's almost as if you've got to do it the day of, just to remind people. It's more of a reminder.
With the primary, and it's going to be one of the and also with the primary, this is a Republican primary for us. But I'm also on the ticket as a conservative and an independent. Yeah. So, I'm on 3 different slots on the thing. So, but we'll see what happens with the Republican, and we'll go from there.
So let's talk a little bit. I know we mentioned this last time, but tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, grew up here in the city, on the north side. Went to school, graduated Corning East, went on to Corning Community College, and then went to Rochester to school. Left there, got hired in the town of Irwin in 1981 as a police officer. Transferred to the village of Addison, spent 8 years in Addison, for which I was in charge, which was a lot of fun. Then left there, went to Painted Post, and from Painted Post I came to Corning PD in 1990, and retired out of here after 15 years. So.
Well, and obviously you retired. You've got things that probably are a lot more fun than being Corning Town Justice. So why did you decide to run?
After I retired, I worked for a company, private security investigation company for a while. I also worked for a company that went after tax fraud, tax cheats.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of fun. Both of them was a lot of fun. But now I'm at the point. I'm 67 years old. I decided I'm done. I don't want to do any more of that stuff. I was contacted about doing this, running for judge. That sounds like it'd be a lot of fun. You know, I certainly have the time on my hands. I know it's only a part-time position, but I could definitely give it a full-time,
Sure.
you know, attention. And yeah, see what happens here.
Well, and you're new to the political game. What is that? What does that feel like now that you've seen it firsthand?
I'm not a politician. I am not a politician. You know, this is a town justice position, you know, and you shouldn't be a politics should stay completely out of anything with a judge anyway.
Right.
And no. This isn't, I don't like it. You know, honestly, there's got to be a different way.
I would think so.
Now, I understand, like, with politics, with somebody running for president or an elected office where you're an alderman, you know, councilman or something like that, that's one thing. But a judge has got to be above all of that. And you're putting them in a position where, you know, you're trying to pick sides, and it's like, no, you shouldn't do that. So there's got to be a better way to do this, I would think, but I have no idea what that would be.
Right. And that's the biggest thing when I have candidates on, and I have to kind of do the disclaimer that I can't get too specific with a judge. But for a few months, they're allowed to be very political. And then I won't talk to them for 4 years because they're in office and they can't come on the show and talk about anything going on.
Which, you know, I don't agree with that either.
Right.
You know, a lot of people have a lot of questions for judges.
Of course.
Because not everybody's familiar with the law and how things work. So it should be fine for a judge to be able to come on and talk to you and say, you know, if you have questions, this is how the system works. This is how the process works.
Right.
They don't allow you to do that.
No.
It's like being a retired judge. You're not allowed to, you know, go out and campaign for somebody.
know.
You're retired. You know, why can't you, you know.
You didn't know it was a lifetime job, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and especially like if you're town justice, you know, in a small town and you retire, you can't back somebody you like, you know, publicly. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's the state. So.
No. Well, and you mentioned getting questions, and you've been knocking on a lot of doors, whether petition season or now as we near primaries. What are some of the concerns, some of the things that people have expressed to you?
Honestly, with the town, with the justice, they don't really know.
No, they don't know what you're doing.
They don't know a whole lot about what the justice does. And that goes back to what I was just saying. You know, it's too bad we can't come on and talk about, or justice can't come on. Basically, it's like, okay, who are you? You know, what do you got to offer to this position? Is this something that you can do? Because it is it's just not a fly-by-night position.
No.
It's a justice position. You got to be familiar with the law, and you got to be able to understand the law. And, of course, with my background in law enforcement, you know, and my dealings with all the judges over the years, I've dealt with a lot of very good judges. And I've learned a lot from them, so yeah.
What do you think when you look forward, if you are successful after the primary, or after the general election, I should say, what do you think the biggest issues you'll face in the town of Corning as justice?
With the town of Corning, I would imagine it's probably going to be traffic.
Yeah.
You know, that's the big thing in a small town. You've got, you know, your small claims is going to be something. Which small claims are tough because somebody walks away mad.
Right.
And in a small town, there's a good chance you're going to know both parties. You know? The only thing you're going to deal with as far as criminal-wise is up to a misdemeanor. You know, so, but still, you know, there are misdemeanors out there where you might have to sentence somebody to a heavy sentence.
Right.
And, you know, you got to be able to look at that person and say, is this the first time?
Right.
Or is this one of these where you've done it 3 times before?
Right.
Maybe you're not learning your lesson. You got to be able to read their character. So.
Right. And people may not realize that, but you're right. That could be awkward as you stop into Wegmans. There's your neighbor you just find.
Well, it's that way now.
Yeah, right. That's
when I was training guys, I would say, listen, every ticket you write, that person will remember you for the rest of their lives.
True.
You're going to write 1,000 tickets in your profession. You're not going to remember them all, obviously, but they're going to remember you.
That's true.
And I just had an incident a year ago where there was a person I had no recollection of came up to me and says, "Yeah, you wrote me a speeding ticket for doing, 55 and a 30 coming into the city of Corning back in 1990." Well, I don't remember you, but he remembered me. And
hopefully he's not a voter, right?
No, he was actually. He was very nice. He's like, "Yeah, I deserved it, man. You were right. I deserved it."
Isn't that funny?
Like, cool. Because a lot of them don't.
No.
You can tell. You walk down the aisle in Wegmans, and all of a sudden you see a guy, and you're like, "Uh-oh, I don't remember him, but I know by the look that I've dealt with him on a negative side."
I'm sure. Now, how has the race been shaping up? Has it kind of went the way you? I know you're new to politics, but the way you thought it was going to be?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the negative stuff.
Sure.
I don't believe in that.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get into any of that stuff because it's not me. Yeah. Other than that, I mean, it's I'm new to this, so this is what it is.
Yeah. You got no other choice, right?
Yeah.
So what's your primary day going to look like?
Vote.
Yeah.
You know, actually, I think I might do the early voting because this might sound strange, but like my polling place is at the fire department
Right.
in East Corning. I don't want to be there.
Right.
I don't want people to see me there. I just don't. I want someone saying, "Hey, he was at the polling place, influencing people."
Right.
Even though that I know that wouldn't happen, I'll go up and vote early.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just see what happens. I
Yeah,
mean,
because people don't realize the rules. I mean, if you go in and other than say hi in your name, it could be looked at as if you are trying to influence.
Exactly.
It's a really strict rule.
Why put yourself in that position? That's what's nice about the early voting. You know, you can go up there and do it, and
You know what I like about early voting too, and not this isn't for you, but you know sometimes we forget. June 23rd, it's not like every day we go and vote.
Right.
So if you get it out of the way, you go vote, and then on the 23rd, you have nothing to worry about. Or, heaven forbid, you get sick or something like that. Just kind of get it out of the way. And as you said, it starts Saturday. It starts on the 13th, and that's at the Bath Annex. It's easy to find. They'll have signs everywhere. Or you can go on the 23rd and vote in person, which a lot of people like.
and that's why we're trying to get the word out right now. I mean, because the early voting
Yeah.
starts Saturday, get out there and get it done. If you can't, you know,
Yeah.
can't do it later, it's there and available for you.
Absolutely. So what would you say? Well, first of all, I'll ask this. How can people help your campaign as we near the end?
Vote.
Just vote. That's it, right? Yeah.
I mean, we're more than happy to for volunteers. I mean, anybody wants to knock on doors for us, and yeah, you know,
Of course.
get a hold of us, and we'll be happy to take you in. But just vote, man.
Yeah,
Get out
that's
there
it.
and vote.
That's it. All right. What would you say to voters before they head to the booth?
I've got the experience, you know. I would like to give the town of Corning the opportunity to put me in there, and I'll do a wonderful job for them if they do.
Yeah.
So-
Well, great. Well, best of luck. And what's your day after the primary look like?
Probably out mowing in the woods,
Yeah, there
like
you go.
I normally do.
There you
you
go.
know, it's agricultural.
Back to
stuff,
life,
but-
right?
Yeah.
Well, Randy, thanks so much for being on the program, and we'll probably talk to you after, all right?
Yep.
All
Yes,
right.
sir.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. So glad that you joined us this morning. Thank you to Randy Dye for being on the program, running for Town Justice in the town of Corning. The big topic amongst everyone is get out and vote on primary day. Early voting does start tomorrow here in Steuben. You drive to Bath, go to the Bath Annex. You'll see signs everywhere. But if you're not an early voter, that's fine. Make sure, and we'll be reminding you a lot, make sure to get out on the 23rd. Mark your calendar right now it's a tough year is why I'm saying it and why we're pushing it so hard. Because in that instance, in the town of Corning, you just have two candidates running, and that's the only thing that's going to be on the ballot. Now, if you're a Democrat, there's a lot of options. Well, not a lot, but there's state comptroller as well as the congressional race. So there's that. But if you're a Republican, there's only a few opportunities, or a few candidates, I should say, and we've mentioned them over and over again. Well, why not? I have it right here, our list. You have the town of Campbell. There's a primary for town supervisor. Corning Town, there's Town Justice, who we just talked with Randy Dye. In Irwin, there's council member. Lindley, town supervisor and highway superintendent. And Rathbone, council member. So other than Lindley, there will only be two people on the ballot. So I know it's tempting to say, I'll skip this one, but you don't know how much it means. Every single vote will count, and it's going to be a low turnout, I predict. I hate to say it. So you could argue that your vote matters even more. All right. Two quick things before we take another break, because we're running just a little bit late. We're preparing for Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Listen to these two headlines. College students are rapidly losing the ability to read. In a new essay for the Chronicle Higher Education, university-level literature and writing instructor Tyler Jad recalls how not a single one of his students could get through an assigned 20-page article, something that he had read without complaint as an undergraduate a decade ago. One student confessed that the reason they didn't finish was that they kept losing track of what the paper was about, and there's no doubt they are not alone. Then we go to a post from California Post. Professors at a top California college are forced to radically alter their coursework as students struggle to read. The concerns raised by faculty at the University of California, Berkeley, come amid a broader debate across the University of California about whether incoming students are arriving on campus academically prepared for college-level work. Several professors told student newspaper The Daily Californian that reading expectations have steadily declined over the past 2 decades, prompting some instructors to scale back assignments in order to maintain meaningful classroom discussions. Wow. All right, on that note, we got to take a short break. Then we're getting ready to wrap up hour number 1. Get your pictures of Big Boy in, or let me know how it went, your thoughts on it, and keep those comments, keep those waves coming in. We'll be right back, getting ready to wrap up hour number 1. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. And we're getting ready to wrap up hour number 1. That's hard to believe. So I've got a quick announcement. Yesterday, we interviewed Mark Margison. He is running for Chemung County Executive. And he had discussed that he was having a debate, an open debate, at Illegal last night. If you attended, I would love to hear from you. It was expected that the incumbent, Chris Moss, would not attend. That is not the way it worked out. He did attend, and there was actually a debate, in-person debate. Now, that got me thinking, why not have a televised debate? Not everybody made it out to Illegal last night. They were still celebrating seeing Big Boy, the train. So if you didn't, I thought, well, you know where a good opportunity would be was Frankly Speaking. So we talked, we're just starting the early process, but I've talked with each camp to see if that is something that is possible, because remember, primary day is the 23rd, so we're running very short on time. So again, an open invitation for a Chemung County Executive debate on Frankly Speaking is out there. Incumbent Chris Moss has accepted said proposal. So we are just in talks right now, very, very early stages to figure out if it is possible, schedules and things like that, and I will keep you updated. But again, if you've followed it all, or maybe you've heard the stories back in the first executive race when it was Chris Moss, Jerome Emanuel, and Mike Cruzan, the exclusive interview was done on Frankly Speaking at the time on radio, also later broadcast right here on Big Fox. So we would love to kind of relive the glory, if you will, and have the televised debate right here on Frankly Speaking. I'll keep you updated, but if you're interested in that, you can let me know. I think it would be a great opportunity for you to have it. And hasn't that been our goal on Frankly Speaking the whole time, to make sure that you know everything you possibly can about the candidates before you head to the booth? And now we've had a couple times each. I think they're 2 and 2. We've had Mark Margison on twice as of yesterday, and Executive Moss will be on next week, so we'll talk to him about that, and we'll make sure maybe without the debate, maybe we won't have him on next week. We'll just wait for the debate. We'll get that all figured out. Trust me, this is at the very early stages, but we are in talks, and we hope that we can make that work, and I will keep you updated because I'd be very excited to host that debate, and I know many people are clamoring for it. I think a lot of people perhaps maybe didn't, I mean, it sounded like it was a good crowd, but maybe didn't expect, I know they didn't expect Moss to show up last night, and he did. Kudos to him. But, of course, you may not have had the opportunity to see it. So we're going to keep those feelers out there and see what we can learn and see if we can have our first, Frankly Speaking, on TV debate. We'd love to do that. Okay, when we return, well, we'll have maybe time to get to a couple quick issues. But then we're going to hear from Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. I hope you keep those comments coming in, keep those waves coming in. Let me know what you thought about the World Cup. Big Boy, what else we got? I think that covers everything. We heard from Congressman Nick Langworthy in this hour. We heard from Randy Dye. This is a jam-packed show. I don't know about you, but I'm having a blast. I hope you're having as much fun. Stay with us for hour number 2 after this. And we welcome you to hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. And I thank you for joining us. We've got a lot left to cover, and Assemblyman Phil Palmesano coming in just a few moments. I wanted to mention there is a new breaking story involving Graham Plattner from a former lover. Graham Plattner, it is being reported by the New York Post, cheated on his fiancée and bragged about his Nazi tattoo that it was a reminder that the U.S. was the evil bad guy. That's according to an ex-girlfriend with whom he cheated on his fiancée with in 2021. The left-wing streamer who spoke to the Post is the second woman to say the Plantner knew about the fascists' origin of the skull tattoo and the skull and crossbone, despite his claims that he didn't realize it was a Third Reich symbol until last fall. Her assertions were backed up by texts, text messages reviewed by the Post that she sent to her mom in September of 2025, in which she blasted him for his Nazi tattoo and other things that I cannot repeat, and claims that he tarnished her reputation by using her to step out on his fiancée. The woman also offered allegations Plantner cheated on his second partner before his current wife, a now ex-fiancée, he was engaged to around that time. As a person who is a leftist, I immediately looked at him and asked him, is that, how do you say that, Totenkopf? And he told me he will hold his weight forever bravado sob story about how it was. But he decided to keep it as a reminder that the United States was the evil bad guys overseas. The woman spoke to the Post on the condition her name not be used. On Wednesday, the woman publicly shared screenshots of private messages where she described the Nazi tattoo, the messages to her mother. Better not take a peek at the Nazi tattoo on his chest, she wrote in another message to a pal. I'm not going to go through all of her text messages here. She also included a screenshot of an image of Plantner on a boat showing off oysters dated June 15, 2021 in Bar Harbor, Maine, not far from his hometown. So that will be a new level to this. Now, he had told fellow Democrats in that kind of behind closed doors meeting that there would not be any more credible allegations. That seems pretty credible when you're talking about text messages being put forth. Now, Graham Plantner said that President Trump was certainly the worst person to have ever run for office. Well, coming from Jen Psaki said, you've gotten under Donald Trump's skin. You could see that we played a sample of that. I think he called you a thug. I don't even know. Repeatedly today, we played some of it, and he said, you are the worst than any human being that's ever run for office, probably. What do you think of that? Plantner said, well, coming from certainly the worst person to have ever run for office, I take it as an immense compliment. Okay. Now, Chris Coons, senator from Delaware, said he had concerns. He's a Democrat. Has concerns with Graham Plantner. Now, a lot of people have still jumped on the bandwagon, still support him with the Nazi tattoo. Kuhn said, I've got my own re-election campaign to focus on. I have lots of current colleagues who I am helping and supporting, whether it's Sherrod Brown, who is seeking to return to his seat, or others like Mark Warner, who I'm campaigning with and supporting. I know Susan Collins. I've worked with her, and I understand and respect why the voters of Maine have chosen someone who is an outspoken, forceful progressive, someone who's a combat veteran and brings a new direction to the state of Maine. If he were to be elected, but I've had real concerns about his tattoo and his story about what he thought or didn't think about the Nazi-affiliated tattoo, and some of the allegations about his personal conduct. At the end of the day, I think the voters of Maine made it pretty clear that they wanted national Democrats to stay out of their primary and make up their own minds. Anyway, another quick announcement. I'm going quick. Sorry, but we've got the Assemblyman coming in just a little bit. Gavin Newsom, potential presidential candidate, at least in his own mind, he is apparently going to do an interview with Hunter Biden. Gavin Newsom seems to think he'll do his profile, The World of Good, hanging out with Joe Biden's disgraced son. And, we should know, runaway dad. The California governor was all smiles as he dropped a teaser to his latest episode of his podcast, which is called This is Gavin Newsom, really original. Newsom released a teaser clip from his sit-down, jokingly introducing his guest as presidential candidate Hunter Biden. Biden, in a clip, joked back, here's the deal, I'll run, but only as your VP. Sure. All right. If that's something that interests you. Oh, hey, we got a... Okay, thank you. Cameron, from our good friends from Cameron, New York, they sent a picture of Big Boy. We'll show you that here in just a little bit when we come back from break. Did you enjoy seeing Big Boy? I know I keep saying it felt like the world kind of stopped for just a moment. Everybody was gathered around. Let me know. Send your pictures in. I'd love to show them on air. We've got the Assemblyman coming in, but that will not stop us from showing pictures of Big Boy. One quick thing about Spencer Pratt as an update. He posted on Twitter Thursday, Are they done counting yet? Pratt, who has not conceded or formally contested the results, was also seen out with his wife the same day having dinner. Anyway, he's a good question. And at the New York Post, they write, "Congratulations to the left, to all the progressives, socialists, communists, anarchists, and former normal liberals. You won. You pulled it off. You've completely undermined the county, the city, the electoral process, and democracy itself, and you did it without 99% of the population even aware of what was coming. Those in progressive crowds are incredibly patient, methodical. Inch by inch, they infiltrated nearly all elective offices, bureaucracies, and most of the media. They are a relentless force that has choked the joy out of everyday life in many parts of Los Angeles." More on that in a moment. All right. We got the assemblyman coming in, but we got to take a short break, and then we'll show you that picture of Big Boy in Cameron, New York. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And in that studio, we have Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. But before that, we've got to show our picture of Big Boy from Cameron, New York. That's a great photo. Thank you for sending that in. Everybody, the world stopped for just a moment when Big Boy came to town. I happened to see it in the beautiful town of Irwin. But now we join Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Good morning.
Good morning, Frank.
How's everything going this morning?
Well, we're not in Albany. That's good.
And that's always good.
When we're not in Albany, less damage can be done.
Right, and we got to talk about the end of session. We talked with Joe Sempolinski, I think it was Tuesday that week while he was in Albany. And obviously, a lot of things were in the air. Thursday was kind of the final day of the end of session, right?
Yeah, we finished. Actually, we finished. I'm sorry to the viewers. I'm saying it, but we finished at. I think it was on Friday night.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah,
blends
Friday
together.
night. Yeah, it's all been a blur about 8:00 p.m.
Now,
give or take.
Here's why I want to ask, because we talked about the budget before, and we're going to talk about more about the end of session. Mm-hmm. It depends on what outlet you go to, but I'll quote the way that the New York Post quoted it. Kathy Hochul's office lied about the state budget cost, underestimating by $9 billion.
Yes, that announcement came out, I think, 24 to 48 hours ago.
Yeah.
When they passed the budget, they said it was a $268 billion budget. Then they came out, the financial plan said it was $277 billion, so $9 billion more than what everyone claimed and touted. That's $22 billion more than the enacted budget last year. And if you look at Governor Hochul's time frame in budget in the office, that's nearly $100 billion more than when she started. I mean, so it's just, unfortunately, and I was asked by a reporter yesterday about it, I'm like, it's just more of the same.
Yeah.
It's unsustainable and uncontrolled spending, more increase in spending, more taxes, more debt, more out-year budget gaps. Now our four-year budget gaps or out-year budget gaps are like $32 billion.
Yeah.
And I don't understand, we do not have a revenue problem in the state. We have a spending problem in the state. And I think the one thing I continue to say over and over again, I think my colleagues thinks it's their money.
Absolutely.
And they forget it's the people's money. I mean, the small businesses, the families out there, your viewers who are listening, they're making tough decisions every day. They're not overspending. They're dealing with tight budgets, and they, given the fiscal strains, the affordability crisis we have going on, they're all making tough decisions to make ends meet. Right. But the state of New York, their answer to the affordability crisis is spend more of your money, or to give a rebate check that's not even going to maybe pay for a round of groceries. Not nearly enough to put a dent in the energy crisis and utility crisis that we're facing too.
Well, and it's not as if $9 billion is a rounding error. Yeah. I want to quote Assembly Minority Leader Ed Rod. He said, apparently Democrats had to pass the state budget so they could find out what was in it.
Yes.
Albany Democrats demand a blank check from New York taxpayers and signed it in the dark. Backwards budgeting might be the Democratic way, but it doesn't work for the families who are forced to pick up the tab.
Well, it's so true. And, Ed, Leader Ra, he has a legislation that he supported that would require, and every time I got up and debated the budget bills, well, first, we had 15 budget extenders before we got to a budget vote.
Yeah.
So every time I'm like,
we played every one of your clips.
Every time I say, where's the financial plan? Where's the details? And even the report said, you didn't know how much money we were spending. I go, yeah, we knew the approximate amount. We knew it was going to be around $268 billion. But before you start passing any budget bills, we should have a complete financial plan in front of us, what the total amount is. I mean, how much we're totally spending in total before we start voting on billions of dollars, like the education budget or the Medicaid budget. I mean, so yeah, it's mind-blowing to me, this hypocrisy. I mean, they just continue to just spend money that's not theirs.
And we're going to talk about the hypocrisy when it comes to some other issues too here in a little bit. But again, it's a lack of transparency. And I joked with Joe, everybody in the media wants to make it about the media, make it about themselves. But it's very frustrating when the budget gets passed and we don't know what's in it, just like you didn't.
Right.
All of a sudden it comes out and they say it passed. Well, then we have to start doing the research and the homework because everything was done behind closed doors.
I mean, it kind of goes through this. It's like a storyline with the Democrats.
Oh, yeah.
Remember Nancy Pelosi with the health care plan? We got to pass it to find out what's in it.
Exactly.
Same thing with this, the budget. We got to pass the budget to find out how much it is and what's in it. Same thing with the CLCPA, those types of things. I mean, it's just one thing after another, and it's not good for transparency. It's not good for New Yorkers. I mean, not just us,
Right.
The legislature before voting on it, but the public should have time to view these documents.
I agree.
We have to do a message of necessity. We were supposed to have a 3-day constitutional requirement that a bill is in print, it's in sight for 3 days, then we vote on it. But they always go to the message of necessity. I mean, we were already 57 days late anyway. What's another couple days at that point to do it in the full interest of transparency to the public?
$277 billion, and it should it be noted that Governor Hochul's office refused to comment on why it was so much higher.
Right, and then I mean the other thing too is everyone says 277 billion. I like to say $250 billion.
Yeah.
More than $250 billion. And the CLCPA, which I know we'll talk about, is more than $250 billion. I mean, this is significant amounts of money. And I will say to the viewer and to you, when we were passing the extenders, I can't remember which one it was when we hit.
Right.
At that one point, the amount of just the amount we've spent in those extenders was more than the spending of 19 different states.
That is wild. So let's do. And when you're talking about $277 billion, $250 billion, there's got to be some good.
Well, yes.
There's a lot of bad though, and a lot of ugly.
Yes, and that's why I always kind of like to refer to. I know we joked over the years called the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yes, when you spend over $250 billion, there's going to be some good things. There's certainly going to be some bad things, and there's some ugly. I mean, I'll talk about the good first because and they should be talked about. I always get kind of be talked about being pessimistic, but there are good things.
Right.
First of all, the changes we made to the CLCPA, which is policy, and policy shouldn't be in the budget, but I'm not really a big proponent of that. I understand, quite frankly, I understand why Governor Hochul did it, especially on some of these issues, but especially the CLCPA. We needed to pump the brakes on that thing. Quite frankly, we need to slam the brakes and start over.
I agree.
I think we need to do a lot more, but the changes to the CLCPA, which I can get into in a little bit, changing the methodology from a 20-year to a 100-year methodology, delaying the time frames, as far as setting regulations, going from 60% emissions by 2040 instead of 70% by 2030.
Right.
Asking the DEC to have some input and control over looking at the Cap and Invest program, the feasibility of it, which I think is a good thing. Also looks at the affordability, the reliability, and feasibility. But I just wish it was someone independent, and I wish NYSA would have more say in that. But to even acknowledge that in the language, I think is a positive thing. But the CLCP changes, of course, the EV school bus made it, which how many times have we talked about on this program? To delay that 5 years, I mean, I think we should delay it even more than that. I think we should even stop it before that. But now, instead of having to convert your entire fleets by 2035, you have to convert it by 2040. And that's still the state of New York. So why are we even having to match in the state of New York?
Right.
In the state of New York, just for the viewer's perspective, the state of New York is not written into law that they have to convert their whole fleet.
Right.
It's a goal. So they can have an out for feasibility, they have an out for affordability, they have a out if the utility network can't handle it. But our school districts do not have an out for affordability, feasibility, reliability. They don't, but the state of New York does, and that's the hypocrisy. I think the state of New York should do it first, and they don't have to start purchasing the school buses until 2032. So it's a little bit of a pause, a pumping of the brakes. I mean, I think we need to slam the brakes, but that's a positive thing. The other good thing I would say that's something that myself, Joe Sempolinski, Chris Friend, Tom O'Mara were advocating for many, many years is we had another increase in the CHIPS program, which brings direct funds right to local municipalities, towns, villages, cities, counties to pay for their help pay for their local roads, bridges, culverts.
You know what's ironic about that? We just got a message, Phil, that says, ask Phil about Route 415 and Painted Post. Is it going to revert to a dirt road? As a joke. But, I mean, because you fought hard. Yeah. You've always fought hard when it comes to CHIPS and funding for roads.
Yes, and 415 is being a state road. That's state dollars. But, but our local communities. And the reason we always say CHIPS is important, is the important priority. 87% of the roads in New York State are owned and maintained by our municipality. 52% of the 18,000 bridges are owned and maintained by our municipalities. So the funding increase is warranted, it's justified. We were asking, quite frankly, for $250 million. The reason being is because if you look at the federal highway construction cost index inflationary rate over the past 3 years, that cost has increased over 70% with fuel costs and everything else. So
What's $250 million if we're rounding up to $9 billion accidentally?
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly
I hate to
point.
talk that way, but
You're so right, though. In the context of a $250 billion budget, $250 million, which would go right to help the local property taxpayer to save those costs. I mean, it's not just a safety. Number one, it's a safety issue. I mean, how many of our kids are put on a school bus every morning that goes over a local road, bridge, or culvert? What if one of those were to collapse? We need to be proactive, not reactive. It's an economic development perspective. Tourism. I mean, we're in the home of the winery region of the state, of the world, quite frankly, in the world.
And then you've got even just like Corning and places like that.
Yeah.
It's been a boom this year.
It has, and then it's great to have a nice interstate, but the businesses in these places located in towns, villages, and cities. So how great is it if the interstate's great, but to get off into local roads are a mess? So that money was a necessary investment, in my opinion. It didn't do as much as my perspective. But $50 million on top of what we had last year is a step in the right direction, and it was put into the CHIP space aid versus doing things like local touring roads, which only affects 88 municipalities, where CHIPS affects every single municipality. That's a positive thing. Another positive thing I would like to say is for our corrections officers. We finally passed the death gamble legislation, and for the viewer who understands what that is.
And I know, I thought of you as soon as I heard it, because you have been fighting for this tooth and nail for how long?
Many, many years, and our corrections officers, all of us, our legislative delegation, this is something that passed unanimously in both houses several years. It was been vetoed by two different governors. Governor Cuomo vetoed it, and Governor Hochul vetoed it twice. Fortunately, it passed this year in the budget. And how that works is a corrections officer, they can retire after 25 years of service if they're at a certain age. If they were to say they wanted to stay on and continue to work, which we need many corrections officers to stay on and work, because the Governor Hochul fired 2,000 of them during the work protest last year. There's a workforce shortage, so we need many of these individuals to stay on from a retention perspective. Yeah. If they were to stay on without the death gamble now, if they didn't have it, say they got to their 25 years, they would secure their pension. But if they were to die in service, not at the facility, just die, their loved one, their spouse, would only get 3 times their annual salary. They would not be entitled to receive that pension that they not only deserve but have earned. So now that brings back equity to that. So that's a very, very good positive thing that came out of this that we pushed for, and we're happy to see it. I think the other positive things I would say is, we always like to see an increase in funding for our libraries. I mean, they're like the central hubs for many of our rural communities. And in school aid, the governor put a 1% base increase. Many of us have said it should be at least it was 2% last year, at least get back to that same level, because, I mean, I know enrollment dictates some of these numbers, but whether you have 30 kids in the classroom or 20 kids in the classroom, you're still paying for increased pension costs for the employees, which is another issue we can talk about. We're still paying for health insurance that continues to rise. You're still paying for staff in those rooms, heating those rooms, cooling those rooms. There's costs, fixed costs that are there, and we need to make sure, especially in our rural areas, because the formula gets changed, and it's a complicated educational formula. Sure. They made changes to deal with English as English language learners which benefit the city areas, but not for formula changes that are more important to our rural areas. So that 2% base was helped. Those are some good things. And of course, the context of a $250 billion budget.
You would hope.
That's
you would
good,
hope
yes.
there's a couple good
exactly.
things. Well, we'll talk about the bad and the ugly when we return. We got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Jack is on the road getting us some photos of Big Boy. He's in Sayre. There's our newest picture. We'll play more of those or show more of those on Monday's edition, because we've got the Assemblyman in the studio. Phil, how about this for a comment? Thank you, Phil, for all that you do. Isn't that nice?
It is nice. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I should turn on your mic
privilege.
when you say that. I should turn on your mic. Oh, by the way, I forgot to start with this. I got stickers. Don't let me forget. I'm going to give you some Frankly Speaking stickers. Nice. All right, you give to your friends in Albany.
I can wear it in the parade when I walk in the parade.
There you go.
I'm your promoter.
Yeah, you are you're my producer too. You give me a lot of great interviews. All right, so we talked about the good in the budget. which again, when we say good, we're talking about $250 billion, so there should be some good. What are you looking at, the bad and the ugly? How do we think the bad?
The bad, I mean, I did talk a little bit about the bad when I talked about the
that's
spending
true.
level,
Yeah,
the
that's true.
unsustainable spending and
That's
taxes, debt, out-year budget gaps. I mean, we did talk about that. I mean, some of the bad stuff, I mean, one of the big things that stuck out at me is the immigration changes that were made as part of the budget. I'm sure you probably talked to the sheriff. I mean, some of these immigration changes, yes, horrible. One of them, the 287 agreements that allows the cooperation between the local law enforcement and the federal officials. You know, some of these agreements have been in place for decades. So now this basically voids those agreements. And so now the sheriff, you know, Aller can't have that agreement with the federal officials, which makes a big mistake.
It's a huge mistake for safety, for public safety, but also that was money that was coming in. I mean, just at the base level, was money that was coming into the county.
Exactly, and the thing is that when I debated the sponsor who spoke more onto this issue, she goes, "We don't want tax dollars going." I go, "State tax dollars or local?" I go, "These are local tax dollars. That's what they want. They're in charge of those dollars. They know what's best to protect their citizens." Obviously, maybe the state of New York doesn't seem to know that, but let the locals deal with this issue. I mean, it definitely usurps local control, local protection,
Totally agree.
and violates that ability for our sheriff to keep us safe on these issues.
Do you? And I don't want to say it's a conspiracy theory. It's a theory that she went so forceful with that because Bruce Blakeman has done such a great job in Nassau County working with ICE.
Yeah, I think she
that's
wants
a part
to
of
go.
it.
She wants to go. She knows she's lost that part of it. She knows she's lost the public safety argument because all you have to do is go bail reform, discovery reform. Now
Raise the age. I
raise the
mentioned that
age.
yesterday.
I mean,
another 15-year-old kid
you might
kills
as well-
a 41-year-old guy on the
You
bus.
might as well call that the Gang Recruitment Act of the New York State Legislature. It's terrible. There's no responsibility. So you have that. Then the immigration changes. With this would allow citizens to sue federal immigration officials. I mean, are you kidding me? Not allowing them to wear masks to protect themselves, and because I'm out there getting doxxed and that cooperation. I mean,
And I have a problem with the mask because last year, remember, she
Yes.
talked about it, that she was doing it because at that point there's a lot of members of the Jewish community in New York City that were being harassed by people in masks.
Yes.
And she said, we're going to ban masks. I was all for that because when you see people calling out Jewish people on a subway train and saying, stand up so we know who you are, wearing a mask, it was terrifying.
Right.
And now instead of doing it the right way, she says, no, we're going to go after law enforcement.
Right, and it's terrible. And I think this is part of the other narrative. I mean, again, we talked about the local control. We talked about, the safety side of this. I mean, what kind of message does this send to our law enforcement officers who risk their lives every day when they go out into the community? I mean, when I talked to the sheriff about the 287 agreements, it's better, it's safer, because now we deal with them inside the correctional facility rather than dealing with them out in the streets. I mean, it's safer for everyone. But that's why you see those problems like in Minnesota, because they don't work and they don't have cooperation. So they're, it's just terrible. But on top of it, on this issue, it just doubles down on our sanctuary city, sanctuary state policies. And what kind of messages does it send to our public? I mean, it basically tips the scales of justice, continues to tip the scales of justice with all these policies in favor of the criminal over public safety, over crime victims and their families, and certainly over law enforcement. And I do remind the viewers, I've said this on your show before, we had the perfect storm of basically failed immigration policies. And I said this on the floor during the debate to wrap it up. I mean, number one, we knew under President Biden there was no border security at all, open door. So we had individuals come across the border. This one particular individual came across the border, was checked, was basically not vetted, just released, go ahead. Where did they come? They came to New York because we're a sanctuary city, we're a magnet for illegal immigrants because of the benefits and everything else. They committed a crime. Because of our failed bail laws, they were released. Because we're a sanctuary city, they did not cooperate and contact local federal law enforcement to come get this individual. They just released them. Where that individual went down to Atlanta, Georgia, and murdered Laken Riley.
Right.
And there are stories like this all across our country, and they just want to continue to put their head in the ground and out of sight, out of mind, but it's not out of sight, out of mind to those families who lost loved ones. And it's sad, it's destructive, dangerous policy, and that's why it's part of, not only do we have an affordability crisis in the state of New York, we have a public safety crisis and a quality of life crisis. It's all created by these failed policies that Governor Hochul and the Democrats are advancing.
You even look at the Penn Station slasher there that happened the other day. He was out. He had done a very similar thing. I think they said back in 2022, but like before the ink was dry, he was back out on the street.
Right.
It's time and time again with bad.
But yeah, who do they want to prosecute? They want to prosecute someone, a good Samaritan who's saving lives. I don't even remember the Daniel Pani.
Yeah.
They prosecuted that guy.
Yeah.
And when he helped save other people from a disturbed person who was going to pose harm, this is a hero.
Yeah.
A veteran hero, and they prosecute him. Are you kidding me?
Well, look at the Cooler Cop. I mean, we could go on all day.
The Cooler Cop.
Cooler Cop, there's an example. The judge gave him, what was it, 6 to 9 years, where that same judge had given a man who killed a homeless person less time than the Cooler Cop.
Yeah, and I read another article, I don't know all the details of it, it was passed along to me. There was a trooper that just got sentenced to prison because he pulled someone over, asked for ID, they wouldn't give my ID, something happened, there was an incident, they sped off. I think they used pepper spray to try because of something was going on. Sped off. They tried to control them because they were uncontrolled, and they ran into each other. A child died, and he got sentenced. Are you kidding me?
I know.
But the other person got released. I mean, what is going on in our state?
And that's the problem. And I talk about this with the sheriff so often, that budget time and the end of session concerns the you know what out of me, because what is the next attack on public safety? What is the next attack going to be on our law enforcement and, again, coddling criminals? And it seems like every budget session we get something.
It is always something, and it always tips the scales of justice in favor of the criminals, many violent criminals.
Exactly.
Versus the interests of our public safety, versus the interests of crime victims and their families, and versus the interests of law enforcement. It's just wrong. I mean, our law enforcement are under attack on our streets and are under attack inside our correctional facilities. Right. But yet my Democratic colleagues want to continue to ignore that issue. That's why, another bad part of it, I mean, the spin from there is there are no reforms to the HALT Act, which we have been calling for, which the Governor's Office of Employee Relations with the Docs Commissioner agreed to, and I scope that we need to make these changes, but yet they don't implement it. The governor puts other policies in her budget, but she didn't put this, so that the safety and well-being of our corrections officers must not be a priority, and that's unfortunate.
I know. We got to take a short break. When we come back, it's been a hot topic on this program for a while now, redistricting. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. In that studio, someone Phil Palmesano with his Frankly Speaking sticker. I got to take your name off the camera so we can. I'll see it. There he is. Frankly Speaking. We appreciate that, Phil. We'll give you some extras for all the parades coming up.
There we go. Perfect.
Right. We're talking about redistricting. This is so frustrating for about 10 different reasons. So let's kind of start right from the, and one quick, we had a comment from a viewer before we go to that. From Mark. In answer to Hochul's bill for law enforcement not to help ICE, Tom Homan says he is going to flood New York City with ICE. What's your thoughts on that, Phil?
We need to keep our citizens safe.
Exactly.
And that's what he's trying to do.
Yep. All right, let's talk about the redistricting. What we knew this was going to happen because they had to get it in at the end of the session, right? Because then they have to do a whole nother session before it can be voted on. So where is it at? What are you seeing on kind of the nitty gritty of it?
Well, it's interesting just to kind of give a quick background if I can, because there's a lot to this. There's a lot to unpack from this. But the Democratic colleagues are all saying they're doing this because of what's happening federally. They forget to recognize they're the ones who started this process back in 2021. After the voters approved an independent redistricting commission, in 2021 they tried to change the process before the independent redistricting commission even met because they didn't like what was set up back then, allowing for a 2/3 majority vote of the commission if it's a one-party control. They didn't like that. They didn't like things like that. So they wanted to change it right away. It came to the voters. The voters rejected it. The voters approved IR's independent redistricting in 14 overwhelmingly. In 2020, when they rejected their attempt to deal with redistricting, what did they do anyway? They rejected. They didn't follow the process. They were supposed to do 2 maps. They rejected that. Put in their own maps in 22. Our Judge Pat McAllister here in Steubenville County rejected the maps. Basically said they were didn't follow the proper process, and they were unconstitutionally gerrymandered, so they threw out the maps in 2022 and went to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals upheld it, and then a special master drew the maps for 2022. Then after 2022, in 2023, the Court of Appeals chief judge stepped down. Then they put more people on the court that they viewed were more favorable, and you can see that in the decisions that happened. They went back and sued again. And said, well, that the special master is only supposed to be a temporary, not a permanent. But given the fact that in 2012 we were on a special map for the master's congressional maps for 10 years. So, but they said it was temporary. The Court of Appeals agreed with it, so they went back and created an independent redistricting commission again. They redrew the maps in 2024, and they won more seats from that. And then even in 2025, they tried to go back to court and redraw Nicole Malataxis lines. The court said no. Yeah. So now they passed the first passage of the constitutional amendment to basically tip all the scales of justice in their favor, let them have total control of the process, not needing a 2/3 vote. You only need a simple majority vote if it's a one-party control. They would just control the whole process in mid-year decade and allow for mid-year redistricting. And so if this happens, it will pass now. Which it will pass next year, then we'll go to the voters in 2027 for an up or down vote. And I said at the end of the day, you always say we trust the voters. I go, so do I. I said, hopefully the voters reject this once and again. But that would allow. What
scares me is you say an up or down vote, but then we learned that that in Albany they get to decide how it's worded.
Yeah, and that's mind blowing to me,
doesn't it?
Oh, and I debated this bill with the sponsor of the bill. How it works right now, Frank, for the viewer, when there's a constitutional amendment that comes before the voters. The bipartisan Board of Elections, Republican, Democrat, have to talk and work out the language. There's probably negotiations, probably discussion, probably one wants one way, the other one, but they have to agree on the language and put it before the voters. Now, based on the legislation we passed this week, same week, I referred to it as We Know Best Week or political power grab week in Albany. We did all this in this week. And if they wanted to put on the ballot the Restore Democracy and Protection Act, they could put that on the ballot. Now, who's not going to vote for something like that? But then you read the details of what it is, and it's nothing like that.
And because we've seen it before, happen in the past, where there'll have to be people that basically put out signs that say no actually means yes.
Yes.
Or yes actually means no.
Yeah.
You can see already, because they know this isn't popular among voters.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to word it in a way that dupes the common person to go out and say, well, yeah, of course I support, like you said, democracy.
And I think, we saw in 2020, there's a bunch of ballot initiatives, the redistricting, the allow for no excuse absentee voting. The voters rejected all that, but they came back and tinkered with it. They changed, instead of no excuse absentee voted, they did mail-in voting. So they were constantly usurping what the voters want. And they keep saying we trust the voters. And I say the problems are the voters don't trust us, and who can blame them, because we constantly reject what they tell us they want. You see with redistricting, we see with these other policies, and it's terrible. And so this vote in 2028 will be the fourth set of maps since 2020. And it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's just terrible.
Listen to this line. Unfortunately, control of the crucial words and sentences of which voters rely to make the decision will shift from the bipartisan election board, as you mentioned, to the state's legislative chamber. Since the state, Senate, Assembly, and governor's office are all Democrat controlled, the party's preferences will exclusively shape not just the text of the ballot question, but how they are summarized. Because a lot of times they have the summarization so you can better understand, because it's very legalese and kind of wonky. They get in voter guides and by news media and civic groups. So that reeks to high heaven.
It reeks to high heaven. And where are the so-called good government groups that were always supposedly be good government groups? They were silent. It's shameful on them.
I know. And speaking of redistricting, there's more to it. So there's even the judicial redistricting?
There's judicial redistricting also. So we have the congressional redistricting, which gets a lot of the attention, and rightfully so. But they also put in place a judicial redistricting. They tried this last year, and Governor Hochul, she didn't actually veto it. She Paco vetoed it by not taking any action. So they brought it back up again. And what they want to do is they want to create, like right now, our judicial districts for Steuben County goes from Monroe County, Ontario, Schuyler, Yates, all those counties, not Schuyler, but Yates, down Livingston, and Steuben. It's a big district. So now there's a balance. There's Republican judges, there's Democratic judges. Now what they want to do is they want to create separate districts. Erie County, its own district of judges.
Okay.
Monroe County, its own district of judges. And Onondaga County, its own district of judges, which have the cities, which are Democrat-based. So those are going to create basically more Democrat judges across the board. Everyone knows that, they realize it, and it makes no sense whatsoever. And I take that back to, remember when they passed any changes to a constitutional amendments on, whether election law, they have to go to one of four courts, anything constitutional. Erie County, now they'll have all Democratic judges. Albany County.
Right. I'm trying to think where they.
Well, I think it's Westchester and New York City.
Yeah.
So Democratic bastions. So why would they something like this not have? So this is going to basically create more Democratic judges, and it's problematic from my perspective. It's just, again, we know best, and they just want to have more Democrat judges, and that's the whole purpose of it. I mean, now you might have more Republican judges in some of these other areas that are consolidated, but when if you have to go to court in some of these bigger areas, if you have to go to court in Erie County where you could get a Republican judge, you won't get a Republican judge anymore, and it's problematic. So that's the other part of the redistricting happened. And the other thing we did, I don't know if you talked about it too, is the other piece of legislation we passed that last week is even year elections again. I know we did it for town municipal judge class.
It's a mess.
Now what they did is they're changing the Constitution because this didn't affect sheriffs, DAs, county clerks, because constitutionally they had their specific period of time, which was in the odd years, most of them, some of them. And what happens now, this is going to lump all of them into this even year too. And this doesn't affect New York City.
No, and
they're doing all this.
All of it
New York
doesn't
City.
affect New York City, and we've talked about it before. So if I'm on town council, you know that, and if I'm up for re-election and I have to compete with state senator, assemblyman, all these other people for attention, for ad buys, you couldn't do it. And so the little guy gets the short end of the stick again.
The short end of the stick again. Being able to get an immediate buys is going to be a lot harder. But the other part about it is the ballot. What about ballot confusion? These are going to be like 2-page ballots instead of 1-page ballots. I mean, that's going to be a huge ballot. They say it's going to save on costs. It's not going to save on costs at all. No. I mean, you still have those other elections that need to go on. And the other thing is kind of scary. So
what do they care about save on cost, by the way?
Yeah. When do they care about spending your money?
Yeah.
But the other thing that's concerning me, and I said this on the floor, if you have an overlap and you have a vacancy, say a sheriff or a DA, the current law right now, if there was a vacancy, the governor would appoint that vacancy. If there was a death, if someone moved, something changed the job. But this is going to create much more of that just because of the sequence of how the terms end and everything else. So now the governor will have these appointments. And I said on the floor of the assembly, I go, I can tell you for sure in the 5 counties I represent, Steuben, Yates, Schuyler, Chemung, Seneca, the people I represent do not want Governor Hochul, she's the governor, picking the next sheriff, picking the next DA, picking the next county clerk. They just don't. And this is going to put more power. And when the governor appoints, you run into that next race as the incumbent, you have a little bit more of a head start than someone else. Yeah. So that's all part of the end game. But yet this doesn't include New York City. Yeah. And the interesting thing about it with the even year, they say they want more participation. When are all these ballot questions going to come to the voters? In 27. Yeah. When New York City can vote. And New York City can vote on this, but even though it doesn't affect them.
No, that's not.
So it's just mind-blowing to me, the hypocrisy, the arrogance. They continue to say we trust the voters, but the voters don't trust us. And that's why I kind of, my narrative was when I got up and spoke, welcome to We Know Best Week here in New York. Welcome to the political power grab of the week. And it's just terrible.
I don't want to belabor this, but you think about it in an election year, a big election year. Okay, I can have on you, I can have on the congressman, all that, because it's a really important time. When is the schedule going to get too crowded? For like this morning, I interviewed someone running for town justice, or I run for town council. They're going to get pushed aside and get absolutely no attention.
Oh, you're going to be running with the president.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to be running with the governor.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be no room on a ballot. It's going to be a 2-page ballot. Yep. It's going to be confusing to the voters. And the thing about local government, I mean, I don't know if local government officials get as much credit as they deserve and should receive. You are at the base level, the grassroots level of politics. Mm-hmm. You are right there. You see your neighbor in the grocery store. Exactly. You see him on the street. You talk to them. They know where you live. They know how to call you home when they have questions. You do a tremendous job for our communities. And the fact that and our local governments didn't ask for this. No. They don't want this.
It's just confusing.
It's confusing, and they want that. They might say about people will vote. People will come out and vote if they want to vote. You can't maximize participation just because you want to do it one way or another. But let the voters, let the local governments control, but it's a constant usurping of local control. You see it in one thing we talked about with the immigration, taking over local control of our public safety, taking over local control of elections, taking over local control of siting windmills and solar panels. It's all about usurping local control because Albany thinks they know best, and they don't.
On that note, we got to take a short break. Stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. In that studio, Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. We have a couple comments from viewers. Phil, Ken writes in, please tell Phil that we are grateful that he is working hard to be a good steward of the taxpayers' money. But I have to take exemption to one thing he said. The Democrats in Albany don't think of taxpayer money as their own. They view it as someone else's money. I would bet that they do more due diligence with their own money, working to augment it and protect it, and certainly don't spend it foolishly. It's probably a good point.
That's a great point.
Yeah, comment from a different viewer. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. Tell Phil he is doing a fantastic job. You both have a wonderful weekend. Well, isn't that nice? And finally, time for the Tea Party to return and flood the zone in Albany and have our voices heard, whether it's letters or actually showing up to protest. We need to make these people uncomfortable and realize that people want to be heard. The one-party rule, it always goes back to one-party rule. All right, so we talked about, I think we covered everything with redistricting. We played this clip last week. I was hoping you could talk about it. And this is in reference to our good friend, he's been on the program numerous times, Joe Tobia. And I thought, first of all, great job on the floor with that speech. Could you tell us about the Rural Suicide Council Act, or whatever it's exactly entitled?
This is
Rural Suicide Prevention Council,
This legislation has been around for a number of years, but Joe Tobia brought it to our attention.
Mm-hmm.
And it would create a rural suicide council that basically, it recognizes the fact that we have higher rates of suicide in our rural areas than we do in our urban areas. And Joe brought it to our attention because him and his wife Elisa lost their son Matt tragically to suicide, and they wanted to make a difference. They wanted to help other families, to try to avoid this tragedy. And when you talk to Joe and Elisa, Matt was looking for help, and they couldn't find help, and it's just wrong. The state basically failed him.
Oh, absolutely.
And so he found this legislation. So we found it. A colleague of mine had it in the Assembly, Republican. We took it to a Democratic sponsor, the chairwoman of mental health. She took it. It passed a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And then it got vetoed.
And wasn't the excuse, which is ironic because what we've been talking about all morning long, wasn't it too much cost, Governor Hochul said?
Governor costs, which is mind-blowing to me. Then she vetoes these in lump sums whenever there's councils. This should be done in the context of the budget. And it was just a no-nonsense veto, because what this would do is find best practices, identify sources, identify best practices, things to help address this issue moving forward. A comprehensive approach, and it would require meetings and put in place plans and strategies, and just a common sense approach. So when the governor vetoed it, what happened is the following year, Joe came up to Albany and testified before the Mental Health Budget Committee and talked about it passionately, and it got people's attention. Some things happened. The legislation didn't advance last year because of, I think there was changes in sponsorship because a new person came in. But then he made it again to push this year. And finally, it happened in the last couple of days of session. The Senate passed it, and we passed it. I took a picture of the board and let them know. And when I knew it was coming up for a vote, I just wanted to get up on the floor and just recognize Joe and Elisa.
That's great.
For the advocacy. And again, it's because they want to help other families. And now we're just hoping Governor Hochul signs the bill this time around, and I know he's going to continue that push. And I know that they're trying to do stuff within the department to address these issues, and Joe's a part of those discussions, which he should be, and I'm glad he is. I'm glad he is there. But we want to make it statutory to compel them to do these process, compel them to have these meetings, compel them to put forward these strategies, and I just think it's the right approach. So I just really so much credit to Joe and Elisa.
All right, we got to take our last break. Get your last second comments in for the Assemblyman. We'll be right back. And home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And in that studio this morning, we have Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Phil, it's hard to believe, but we're wrapping up. We do have a comment from a viewer. The 51st state, upstate New York. Let's get it done. Thank you. You have to get one in there, right?
Absolutely.
All right. There's another big. So you had a couple big wins for issues that are really personal to you. And this one, tell us about Donate Life.
Yeah, one thing we did in the budget, we were asking for some additional funding too, because the governor cut some funding, which I don't understand.
Right.
But we got that funding restored to help more promotion with our Donate Life. But the other thing, one big piece of legislation that we were pushing, and I've always said, New Yorkers are good people. The more we can ask the question, do you want to be an organ donor, the more we're going to say yes. We've had signature pieces of legislation like Lauren's Law, which when you do your license, 16, 17 years to register their intent to be an organ donor. The online donation registry, those are the big three. But the big one, another big one we passed, which I consider those are the four anchors, and this will be the anchor, we call it Doorways to Donation. this would allow people when they're filing their income taxes to be asked a question and say yes or no. Do you want to be an organ donor? You don't have to say yes, but you have to answer the question.
Right.
If you want to get your taxes processed, that's the goal. Last year, the governor vetoed it because of some objections from Tax and Finance. We believe we've overcome those objections. The governor should sign it if she wants to save lives.
Yeah.
So now, when people get asked that question, that's important. And why is this important? Right now in New York, we have nearly 8,000 New Yorkers on the transplant wait list.
Right.
Nearly 800 have been waiting for more than 5 years. We have the third highest need for organs, but one of the worst donation rates in the entire country. The national average is 64%. New York is at 52%. We've made tremendous progress over the years, but we still have a long way to go. And I always say when I talk about this issue, we can and we must do better. But the most important, like I think we lost 300 New Yorkers, men, women, and children waiting for a life-saving organ transplant last year. But the most important statistic for people to know, one person who donates at the time of their death can save up to 8 lives and impact the lives of 75 others. Now, I understand when you talk about this issue, it's hard because you're talking about one's own death. Yeah. But then you just heard those statistics I gave you, and think about it for a minute. What if it was your mom or dad? Right. What if it was your brother or sister? What if it was your husband or wife, or God forbid, your son or daughter, and they were in need of a life-saving organ transplant, and you heard those numbers? Maybe, just maybe, you might think a little differently about the issue. Mm-hmm. I think maybe you will. So at a minimum, this should encourage people to have conversations with their family members about their interests. And at the end of the day, we can do this together, and we can save lives. I mean, you can leave a legacy,
Yep, I agree. Phil, it's hard to believe we're out of time.
Yes.
I know. Can you believe I think we covered everything. Did we get everything?
I think we did. Thank you.
You got a busy week. You're going to be meeting with all these state champions. I like when you do this each year.
Yeah, that's definitely. This is a frustrating part to our job, but there's a lot of fun parts to our job. We were at Penn last. We're going to be at Corning and Watkins Glen in the near future, and some others.
That's great. Well, Phil Palmesano has been our guest. We also want to thank Randy Dye for being on the program. He's running for Corning Town Justice. I want to thank Congressman Nick Langworthy for answering our questions about the Anti-Fraud Act. I also want to thank Chris Severson for sending in the stickers, and also Jack for sending all those great pictures of Big Boy. We'll have to do this again, Phil, real soon. How about that?
Some Friday.
Yeah, some Friday. I told Sempolinski he's done with Fridays. Can't take Fridays anymore.
That's all right.
He's on next Thursday, though. See, he listened. All right, so join us next week for Frankly Speaking. Have a great weekend, everyone. Stay safe. We'll see you on Monday.